FBI, step aside. That is the new MAGA war cry. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is another declaration of truth from your host, Terry A. Hurlbut. The Federal Bureau of Investigation has now become a campaign issue in midterms. Their raid on the Trump club called Mar-a-Lago has highlighted how dangerous a federal law enforcement and counter-espionage agency can be to the population it ostensibly guards. The FBI literally could have done no worse, except for randomly rounding up the usual suspects. And when they seized a U.S. congressman's cell phone as he was traveling, they came close to that. The campaign talk has gone far beyond hailing its director and the Attorney General before the green table. It has even gone beyond mere such generalizations as abolish the FBI. Now, for the first time, we hear of concrete measures that Republican gubernatorial candidates have proposed. Those proposals strike at the heart of how much authority the federal government was ever supposed to have. Before we dive into it, I do want to shout out to the prime sponsor of this channel, which is Conservative News and Views, link in the description. Be sure to check out the awesome CNAV Store. Scroll down near the bottom for that link. Lots of great merchandise there, especially this t-shirt that I have chosen for today, which reads, "I need new conspiracies, as all the old ones came true," as I intend to show today. First, I need to catch you up to date on the Trump raid. We now know what the FBI was looking for. On July 31st, 2016, the FBI began to investigate whether then-candidate Donald J. Trump took direction or aid from Russia. They gave their investigation the code name Crossfire Hurricane, after a 2012 movie. The best surviving report on this for public consumption comes from a site calling itself Just Security. The worthies at Just Security deny that the FBI had it in for Trump, but they admit that Crossfire Hurricane included a dark comedy of errors. Just Security ended by saying that Crossfire Hurricane was not up to the usual standards the public has come to expect from a storied, celebrated agency like the FBI. And I'll have more to say on how the FBI got its storied, celebrated reputation later. That investigation wrapped up in 2017. More to the point, on January 19, 2021, President Trump declassified all material relating to Operation Crossfire Hurricane. Don't just take my word for that. I have a link in the description to Trump's direct orders to that very effect. But here's the point you have to take away. The Justice Department, under Attorney General Merrick Garland, refused to carry this through. Indeed, the willful disobedience of orders began before Garland even assumed office on March 11, 2021. That alone lends credence to Trump's allegation that a deep state does exist. And on Monday evening, August 8, 2022, the FBI laid on its raid to recover, as they thought, all remaining copies of Crossfire Hurricane documents. As cover for this, they prevailed upon Judge Bruce E. Reinhardt to approve a search warrant looking for, quote, classified and national security, unquote, documents that belong to the National Archives as per the Presidential Records Act of 1978. Now, recall what I told you yesterday. A writ of assistance is a general search warrant that allows its holder to search anywhere and everywhere for anything and everything authorities don't think the target of the search ought to have. In contrast, in the United States, search warrants must describe particularly the places and objects of any search. Just putting down the address doesn't cut it. The warrant must not only designate a building, but name the rooms in the building that law enforcement officers may search. Furthermore, courts must exclude any evidence that law enforcement obtains by searching without a warrant or beyond its terms. This exclusionary rule dates back to 1914 and has several supporting precedents. I have a link in the description to a page that discusses them all. They include Weeks versus the United States, 1914, Byers versus the United States, 1927, and Yanis versus United States, 1976. Bear this in mind as I tell you these fresh details of how the FBI behaved. They entered the Trump house and ordered several of Trump's attorneys to leave. The one agent showed lawyer Christina Bobb the search warrant from 10 feet away. Then the agents ordered Trump's household staff to turn off the house surveillance system. The staff did not obey that order. And according to one of Trump's sons, Eric, the surveillance system captured several agents clearly exceeding the warrant. For 10 hours, they searched every room in the house, even rifling the wardrobe of Trump's wife, Melania. Now, either they are a bunch of perverts, or they really thought Melania hid away some of that Crossfire Hurricane stuff in her closet. Personally, I go with the pervert theory. But the point is, even if the warrant is valid, the FBI treated it as if it were a writ of assistance. Now, we also learned the most likely reason the supporting affidavit and other documents for the warrant remained under seal. The information could have come from a spy among Trump's household staff. Newsweek cites 2 senior government officials as their sources for this revelation. These same anonymous sources said the FBI laid on the raid when they knew Trump would not be in residence. That way, Trump wouldn't be able to publish lurid photographs of movie scene encounters with FBI agents acting like KGB agents. Now, they didn't count on Trump finding out about it and breaking the news himself, which he can do because he has built a Twitter competitor that he calls, you know the domain, truthsocial.com. What a spectacular backfire, cries one of those SGOs. The rest of what he said is unimportant. Newsweek and its sources can deny as they please that this raid had a political motive, but their denials ring hollow in the face of the FBI getting a warrant of dubious cause, then acting as if they had a writ of assistance instead of a valid Fourth Amendment compliant search warrant. We also have this from Wall Street Journal reporter Paul Sperry through another Twitter user who screen capped his tweets before Twitter suspended Sperry's account. I have a link in the description to that tweet copying the Paul Sperry screen caps. Sperry notes that 3 senior Justice Department officials who took briefings on the raid had definite conflicts of interest. The conflicts go back mainly to Crossfire Hurricane. Now let's see what we have here. Oh wow, gee whiz, look here! Apologies to Tommy Lee Jones. Nicholas McQuaid worked with Hunter Biden and Michael Sussman's criminal attorneys. Lisa Monaco, Obama aide linked to Russiagate, which means she was linked to Crossfire Hurricane. Maggie Goodlander, wife of top Biden aide Jake Sullivan, also implicated in Russiagate. So there you have it. This was about recovering the evidence Trump had on some of the perpetrators of the Russia hoax. Furthermore, quote, CNN is admonishing its reporters not to call the FBI raid of Trump's home a raid. Now, as I've already said, Judge Bruce Reinhart has lately identified himself as the judge who approved the warrant. Why he kept the warrant and supporting affidavit under seal, no one has yet revealed. But Judicial Watch and the Albany Times-Union, that's Albany, New York, by the way, not Albany, Georgia, have each filed a motion to unseal those documents. The report comes from the Epoch Times, which also quoted Judge Reinhardt's order to respond. On or before 5 p.m. Eastern Time on August 15, 2022, the government shall file a response to the motion to unseal. The response may be filed ex parte and under seal as necessary to avoid disclosing matters already under seal. In that event, the government shall file a redacted response in the public record. If it chooses, the government may file a consolidated response to all motions to seal. Unquote, Judge Bruce Reinhardt. And now I'm going to get into the calls to abolish the FBI. Before I do, I want to shout out to a sponsor who can really help you through the economic storms to come. That sponsor is OurSilverLines.com. Do you feel like you're working hard for your money just to get by? You are not alone. The fluctuating economy, employment issues, and unexpected life changes have left many families struggling over the past few years. Collecting gold and silver can help shield you against many of these challenges. But if you're like me many years ago, you don't know where or how to start. Our Silver Lines helps by connecting you with thousands of members who are learning the secrets to creating and protecting true wealth by collecting precious metals. Whether you just want to collect rare and unique coins or take advantage of the business opportunities that that company provides, they can help you learn to live an exceptional life. Visit OurSilverLines.com to learn how you can build a legacy to your future. Now, calls to abolish the FBI are nothing new. More to the point, Bill Huntsman, writing in The American Thinker, sounded such a call in October of 2021. He cites an article in the American Spectator on the subject from November of 2017. Huntsman points out, first of all, that the FBI is not the humble, hard-working agency everyone thought it was, if it ever was. The FBI's first director, J. Edgar Hoover, carefully built that reputation. He had the cooperation of Hollywood to the extent that absolutely anyone planning a movie project featuring the FBI had to run the script and other supporting information through Hoover's office. Hoover also had the willing participation of television producer Quinn Martin, who created the iconic, memorable, long-running series everyone remembers. The FBI, producer Quinn Martin, with Ephraim Zimbalist Jr., Philip Abbott, Stephen Brooks, and William Reynolds, Warner Brothers Television, 1965 through 74. J. Edgar Hoover served the longest as director of the agency. His secret? He had the dirt on all of official Washington. He laid on them an ultimatum. Leave me and my bureau alone or I take you down. But Hoover never played political favorites. He terrorized everyone equally. And he could do that because Washington, D.C. has always been a corrupt city. His death in 1972 affected the Bureau worse than the death of Charles de Gaulle affected France's Fifth Republic. 2 years later, the Quinn Martin series played its finale. Hoover had a number of favorite targets, and his bureau attacked them assiduously. Communists, both internal and external, especially Soviet, Warsaw Pact, and Chinese spies, were his top targets. In fact, he wrote a book, Masters of Deceit, pouring out his rage against communism and communists. His other targets, in decreasing order of probable importance, were bank robbers, kidnappers for ransom, and organized crime syndicates. The ability of the FBI to recover ransoms and kidnap victims became near perfect. But that Quinn Martin series might have made people think that anyone might be subject to kidnap or ransom. Not true, of course. Rich families are where the money is, or was in Hoover's day. But Hoover and Martin took pains to make sure that all Americans would sympathize with the kidnapped victims and never with the kidnappers. And that became part of the larger narrative. If the FBI is coming after you, you must have done something wrong. Now that's how the FBI, that's how J. Edgar Hoover could get away with operations like COINTELPRO, which targeted student demonstrators and anyone else whom Hoover suspected of sympathizing with communists. The targets did little to engender the sympathies of anyone but the most die-hard Bolshevik ideologues and political theorists. But that did not change the fact that COINTELPRO was illegal. The Trump raid shows that the worm has turned. The FBI now treats patriotic Americans the way it treated the Communist Party in the 60s and 70s. And with the Trump raid, we now see the first concrete proposals going beyond the white paper and talking point stage. Florida State Representative Anthony Sabatini of Florida's 32nd District made the first such proposal hours after the raid. I have a link to the tweet in the description. He literally demanded an emergency legislative special session to sever all ties with the DOJ immediately. And with this proposal, this other proposal, he showed that he meant business. I quote, "Any FBI agent conducting law enforcement functions outside the purview of our state should be arrested upon sight." Whew. Whoa, them's fighting words. Presumably he means not to permit the Bureau to do law enforcement outside of federal government reservations or buildings. Bank robbery, that becomes a state beef. Same with kidnap or organized crime. And interstate transportation of stolen property, motor vehicles, whatever, let the Florida State Police chase that down within Florida's borders. Kari Lake, the Republican nominee for governor of Arizona, wants to sue the federal government under the 10th Amendment. I have a link in the description to her tweet of an image of text message. It ends this way: "The 10th Amendment can and will save our republic." Did you hear that? Republic, not democracy. And the road to stripping the feds of power travels right through Arizona. Bravissima! Now, in case you're wondering, 10th what? The 10th Amendment reads, and I quote, "The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people." Now, the Constitution delegates a very narrow list of law enforcement powers to Congress. They include dealing with minting or printing counterfeit coin or currency, crime on the high seas, or crimes in places where Congress has exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever. And that includes Washington, D.C., and any federal reservation or installation. Outside those areas, Congress has no authority. It follows then that the FBI should not exist. And then we have Dan Cox running for governor of Maryland. He goes further. The Baltimore Sun has this tweet about a small part of what Cox has been saying lately. I have a link in the description to that too. But I'm going to skip down to this text that evidently comes from a fundraising email to all Maryland residents. Quote, "As governor, I will use the 9th and 10th Amendments, the Maryland Constitution and Declarations of Rights, the Maryland State Police, and the Maryland Guard to stand against all rogue actions of this out-of-control, tyrannical Biden administration with fierce tenacity. Our children, families, and loved ones, and the freedom we cherish and is our birthright as Americans demand that we oppose these criminal acts of the current administration," unquote. Now, how's that for fighting words? By the way, the 9th Amendment reads, "The enumeration in this Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed as to deny or disparage others retained by the people. Now, obviously, Cox's declaration goes further than a call to abolish the FBI, but the FBI clearly is his first target. Now, Mr. Cox, Ms. Lake, Mr. Sabatina, and Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida, if he decides to take up Sabatina's suggestion, would have widespread sympathy. Check out this tweet from John Beckett, which I've also left in the description. Quote, "I'm hearing lots of Republicans talk about winning the midterms. I'd rather hear red state governors talk about expelling federal agents from their state borders." Now, I already hear a bunch of you wondering, well, what would a post-FBI America look like? Who's going to protect us from enemy spies, bank robbers, kidnappers, gangsters, on and on and on? Well, to answer that, we look at history. Interstate crime was never a serious issue in the days of horse. Even horses could not transport large quantities of stolen bullion or kidnap victims very far. And Alfred Bernard Nobel, the inventor of dynamite, he wouldn't even be born until 1833. The railroads changed everything. Rail transport, by its nature, is more interstate than intrastate. And as railroads crossed the Wild West, bandits, chiefly attacking freight trains and occasional gold shipments attached to passenger trains, became a problem. Real problems attract real solutions, and the new interstate crime problem was no different. Alan Pinkerton, who came to the United States from Scotland in 1842, founded the National Detective Agency that bears his name in 1850. I have a link in the description to the history landing page of Pinkerton's Incorporated. Many staples of police procedure, including the mug shot and the rogues gallery, began as Pinkerton innovations. So, before the FBI had its 10 most wanted fugitives, Pinkerton's had its rogues gallery. Pinkerton's also claims credit for keeping Abraham Lincoln alive as the war between the states was just beginning. Pinkerton still exists, even if the FBI, as the 800-pound gorilla, took most of its business away from it. So Pinkerton's could easily provide all the legitimate protections for which interstate shippers and banks and bullion houses and rich families now rely on the FBI. But the illegitimate activities and 9th and 10th Amendment violations would stop. And that would include treating American patriots and concerned parents as enemies of the state. Link in the description of this article to Trump's orders to declassify the Crossfire Hurricane papers, to the discussion of the Weeks Doctrine and the exclusionary rule, to Paul Sperry's copy tweets about those FBI officials with the conflicts of interest, to 4 tweets about concrete measures against the FBI, to the Pinkerton's history page, and to conservative news and views. I've also left links to the awesome CNAV Store and to OurSilverLines.com, as I also mentioned. And if you like what you've heard, you can like this video. On the end screen, I'm going to leave a subscribe link and definitely links to videos about the Trump raid. This is Terry A. Hurlbut delivering another declaration of truth and reminding you to let the truth set you free.